I'm going to go on to Brian Johnson, not the Liver King. The other Brian Johnson.
All I've got is a long list of studies that show excess protein intake does not lead to fat storage.
If my goal is to find the healthiest longevity-based diet, if I'm having to fill myself full of drugs to keep this going, is it actually the healthiest diet? Are you coming to the right conclusions? Or is this something about you living to 120?
So the studies show everyone put on the same amount of weight. When you look a little bit deeper, in terms of who put on the most amount of fat, the high protein group wasn't number one. It wasn't top.
Overeating on protein will make you fatter. I agree with you. Overeating on anything will make you fatter. Overeating is the key word here, not protein is the key word here.
Whatever the hell is needed for us to say, yes, this is 100% irrefutable, fucking give us it then.
So I will say, as we start this episode, I watched a clip the other day from Modern Wisdom, and he had Stephen Bartlett on the show. And Stephen Bartlett says one of his tricks to dealing with fame, now he's become on the Dragon's Den, is that he never Googles himself. He's taken Joe Rogan's playbook. And Stephen, I'm glad you won't be listening to this episode. Because we're going to talk about your headlines. Now, I will preface this a little bit, though. Because I don't hate Stephen Bartlett. Far from it, actually. I think he's a very good interviewer on the whole. I think he knows how to play the game. I can see why Social Chain made millions. The guy knows social media. The problem comes when it's A, potentially at the expense of confusing and scaring people about health. And B, when you're trying to make it out that it's completely a selfless endeavor, saying that what I realize is that health is the foundation of everything. And if I don't have my health, then I don't have it. And I'm not saying he doesn't believe that. But the way he's going about his podcasts seem like he's wanting views more than he's wanting that health become a massive part of his life. What are your thoughts on the headlines from Diary of a CEO?
The issue I have with the particular episode we're going to talk about is this is promoting the services and business of someone that he is financially invested in. So he's got a lot to gain from pushing the hell out of that episode. Now I get it. Unfortunately, we are in this clickbaity, attention-based world where, well, as Gary Vee puts it, an attention economy. We are almost guaranteed to get your business higher up the ranks, your profile higher up the ranks, more reach across all your social media if you grab people's attention in the way that works. Unfortunately, sound, smart, borderline boring advice is not the stuff people want to hear, even though it's what they need. They want, our brains are broken from 40 years of popular media, unfortunately. So he's just playing the game, right? That's all it is. But it brings into question that why doesn't every other podcast do that? You've never seen that I've never seen a trailer for a Rogan show. There's never been a trailer for Rogan. And Rogan's the biggest podcast on the planet. In terms of,
I would argue to give a bit of defense to Bartlett here. I would argue that he never needed to because he got in the game early and he became famous before he needed to. So Rogan carries the Rogan name. And I'm not saying Bartlett doesn't carry the Diver CEO name, because I think he's getting that way. Marketing was part of the reason why he's become where he has. Whereas Rogan didn't need to market because he was already established when podcasts went big. Potentially,
right? But again, like as marketing trends change over time, maybe, I don't know, maybe that could have got Rogan more followers, I don't know, or less, who knows? Because I'm sure it puts off as many people as it turns on. For want of a better phrase.
Yeah, here's the thing I think with these headlines. It's like they seem to have gotten worse, and I don't know if they have, or if it's more because I don't really understand the things that will trigger busy business investor CEO people. So maybe they were always like this, but they didn't seem as bad because they weren't in my world. But it seems like they're becoming like worse. And I also just don't think, and I'm going to use clickbait is a bad connotation. Clickbait just essentially means they are a title that makes you want to click it, right? You can be clickbaity whilst keeping your integrity. We played this game before, didn't we? I think we did it on the show, didn't we? Where we listed the podcasts
we did
that we had. Like, see if I can find that picture again, because I definitely sent it you, didn't I, on our chats. And like, and I think it's relevant to sort of bring up again, because if we looked at Chris Williamson, and I'm a big fan of Chris Williamson, right? I would still say these are clickbait titles, but not negative clickbait titles. They make me want to click on them without creating fear-mongering, tribalism, and generally just have the right message. Strategies for living longer. I want to live longer. I want to know what their strategies are. Transform how your body moves with Kelly Starrett. I want to be more mobile. That sounds great. Science of fat loss. If I want to lose fat, I'll listen to that. Unlock the Secrets of Fat Loss by Thomas DeLauer and Jim Bro's Need to Evolve, right? They are very good, eye-grabbing titles, but they are not at the expense, potentially, of... And because sometimes, because when I go onto the Diver CEO ones, we've got the scary new research on sugar. Calories are a total lie. That was Mr. Spector again. They're lying about calories. Avoid these 4 foods. And this food is killing you. And here's the thing about these. And like, I kind of get it. Maybe Stephen Bartlett is playing the game a bit better than Chris, in the sense of he knows these headlines are going to get anger, particularly from the fitness industry, which comes back to my point of, is he actually doing this because he values health or he values investment in like Intil to help personal trainers create a living? Because I've watched a video of why he's invested, right? Well, if that was true, you would want to make PT's jobs easier by cutting through the fluff and creating good information rather than making people more scared. But the one I would say here is that the last one I said, this food is killing you. That interview was really good from a great person I absolutely respect, who talked a lot of good stuff and actually didn't really do any clickbait at all in the show. But the trailer was made to seem that way. We also have Giles Yeo on there, right? A man who I'm quite ashamed, and I did call out, and I called out for good reason, for the calorie thing again on Stephen Bartlett's episode. But I've done a lot of research on Giles Yeo since, and he is brilliant. One of the most respected sort of looking at genetics and nature versus nurture and fat loss that you'll ever see, ever. And his points are great. But he will go, what is the thing that's going to rile up the internet the most? And maybe it is necessary. Maybe it's the reason why I won't go viral. But I just feel this. I don't want to. Me personally, don't want to sell my soul or make people more confused about this topic that they're overwhelmed with. Because I don't think those titles or those trailers actually help anyone lose weight.
No,
which is surely the aim of providing weight loss information online.
You would have thought, but it's not the case, and we know that's not the case, and we know for the length of time we've been in the industry, and I'll caveat this in a second, but for the length of time we've been in the industry, we know what works for fat loss. Most of the time, a large percentage of the time, we know what works, and it's not going to be anything new that suddenly appears in the last 2 years on the flipping podcast, or something that's going to be revealed in the future. But to caveat that, Tim Spector, legit scientist, right? I'm not taking anything away from him. I'm not saying he's completely wrong. I'm not saying he's dumb and he's misinterpreting information, although that may also be the case. I'm not saying his opinions are only formed from financial gain, but that may also be the case at the same time.
Information.
Yeah,
he's spinning information to his favor. Tim Spector's very smart, and Tim Spector, when I watched that interview, and again, I'll put a preface on this, by the way. This whole episode is in response to the second Tim Spector episode, where he's basically said, and here is the exact headline, I'll find it now, is extra protein is making you fatter. I'm going to unpack that claim in a second. Yeah. But I will hold out. At this moment in time, we were reacting to a title, and I off air, and I'm not going to mention this. Me and Rob spoke about an incident that happened to me where someone reacted to a title and how annoying that was, right? So I appreciate we haven't... I don't know how this interview's gone yet. I will do. Yes. And if I change my mind what I've recorded, I will wholeheartedly change my mind and put that on camera. But, you know, it's the thing about this he spins stuff. The gut information he's got isn't wrong. The impact potentially, although a little bit pushed, of sugar isn't wrong. Managing your blood glucose isn't wrong. And also the argument he has against calories isn't wrong. But I think the conclusion is flawed because, and this is always the thing I hate about the people that go against calories. They go, calories is pointless because you cannot accurately say that one apple or one salmon has the same calories than another, or that calorie counting is inaccurate because there's a 20 to 30% difference on the label, or people underreport 40 to 50%. I'm like, okay, all right, the tool is flawed. But it doesn't mean that calories in versus calories out isn't an irrefutable science. It just means that people are bad at estimating that. It still doesn't change the fact.
Yeah.
If you put someone in a lab and fed them yourself with stuff that you however you did this, scientifically made sure were the right calories, you put everything through a bomb calorimeter and they only ate smoothies, they would lose weight 100% of the time. So this argument is like people thinking, oh, well, calories doesn't matter because of this. Well, actually, calories do matter. It's just that there are more things involved in it. Do hormones mean that calories are pointless? No. Hormonal output will affect your calorie equation. They will affect your BMR. NEAT, things like this. Like, yes, these don't refute. They are part of an equation. It's like, I don't need to eat food to lose hunger. But then you start talking about actual individual foods. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I'm ranting, but you get my point.
For those who maybe haven't seen the trailer, what are some of the claims he makes? He says eating too much protein will make you fat. Excess protein is just stored as it is. I believe his paraphrasing, but I believe his words are along the lines of excess protein just turns into sugar and fat. He said something about exercise alone is not enough to create a healthy life or lead to weight loss or something like that. There's little bits in there. You go, yes. But then the intent behind the message and the conclusion he's coming to from those clickbaity sentences, again, the entire interview may say something very different indeed. It may actually contradict what's in the trailer. I don't know. We'll watch the flipping episode and we'll see, right? We'll see. And we have known that to happen before. But there are certain claims where it's borderline arrogance as well. Like they're throwing foods in the bin. Well, that's a little bit extreme. And we know eat a largely natural diet. And I shouldn't really use the word natural because natural is, a labeled term as well. Eat as close to
Hold on, mate. Let me just take a sip of my Coke Zero. That's going to spike my insulin levels.
Take a sip of that.
Yeah, it's going to magically make calories out of fairies, and it's going to spike my insulin, and it's going to make me really fat.
That carcinogenic insulin bomb that Simon is now drinking. That I have two of it.
It just tastes like obesity. It's wonderful.
Mate, you can see your gut microbiome's just dying in front of us on this call. You can see, man.
You know those games
what are you doing?
You can play on Instagram where the donuts are coming into your mouth and it's like.
But he's making very arrogant claims in the interest of attention. Okay, so he needs to back this stuff up. Now, again, maybe in the entire episode he does, but in the previous episode he didn't. It was just more of these wild claims. So if he has the studies, the evidence, the clinical trials that show people overeating protein leads to fat storage and an amount of sugar that's going to be potentially detrimental to you, because if there's not, then there's no point even mentioning the fact that it turns into sugar, because we know it can turn into sugar. That's a process in your body. If he's got those studies, then share them, because at the moment, all I've got is a long list of studies that show excess protein intake does not lead to fat storage, even when in a calorie surplus. So
well, exactly that, right? What I often try and teach coaches is sound principles over sound bites.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're principle first, study second, you're evidence informed, not evidence based, you can start to piece these together, right? So I've looked at some studies today, and obviously I pasted them around me in that little video I just put on Instagram. But like, at the same time, if you understand what's going on here, let's unpack this claim. So protein will get turned into sugar and make you fatter. Okay. Overeating on protein will make you fatter. I agree with you. Overeating on anything will make you fatter. Overeating is the key word here, not protein is the key word here. So are we sitting there now with scaring people on protein? We're scaring people on overeating. The claim is right, but you've now you've now made you emphasize this. Like I watched a great video from Alex Hormozy yesterday about sales, and like he was like, if I said I didn't say hit his wife, or I said I didn't say hit his wife, I mean it could have hit someone else's wife, or I didn't say hit his wife, could mean like his son, right? Like it's like the phrasing here is that protein is the enemy rather than overeating is an essential enemy.
Yeah.
Then let's look at this process, right? So fats can easily be stored, fatty acids, add a triglyceride, adipose tissue. Carbohydrates, circulating insulin in the circulating glucose in the bloodstream. Insulin will then store it. Okay, cool. So that will then need to be made into triglycerides, right? So protein, right? Protein will need to then go through gluconeogenesis, which would then in turn be made into carbohydrates, which then needs to go through another process to be turned into fats. So while those things are true, out of the three main macronutrients, let's not talk about alcohol, out of the three main macronutrients, it is by far the hardest one to do that. So you making that claim, it's like, well, you're forgetting that, like, all right, because what you're going to say is that actually you should eat more carbohydrates and fiber because buy my vegan diet book. Because he likes more plant-based foods, right? I don't know if Inspector is actually a vegan, but he's a primarily plant-based guy.
Heavy plant-based elements to his methods and his company,
which I'm not necessarily saying is necessarily wrong, but like here's your thing, and we can make a very quick thing here. One, that protein is the hardest macronutrient to be metabolized as fat, and two, well, has there an agenda here? Well, the argument is going to be from his last interview. Why do we need protein? So now he's come back on to go, no. You don't need protein. You need my book.
Yeah. It's worrying. It is worrying because it is people with a large audience and incredibly extended reach playing with a culture that is only going to listen to a headline. And so now what are people going to do? Well, people will potentially listen to that entire podcast just to get to the bit where he's throwing food in the bin so they can go, right, I'll never buy that again. Where they'll end up buying it again anyway at some point because they'll just end up hungry. They will eventually go to his company's website and realize they can't afford that service. So, might as well just get that shit out of the bin and eat it again. The things such as again, they'll just not worry about protein then. So what will they do? They'll increase their carbs. They'll increase their fats. They will. The first image I had when I used to think, because I'd read it years back, that excess protein intake will make you'll store all that as fat as well. The first initial image I had was, well, yeah, of course, because people don't just exclusively eat lean protein. They're eating, if they're overeating on protein, they're probably overeating on a lot of red meat, a lot of fat on the side, eggs, fat on the side. They're probably eating high fatty sources that are also protein sources as well. In which case, an overabundance of calories, a large percentage of which coming from fat and protein, then of course, no one's overeating on lean protein. And even if they are, there's even less reason for your body to store that fat, to store that excess protein as body fat, because the studies have shown people eating 3 different types of protein amount, whilst carbs were up at 40%, 40 to 45%. That's a pretty high amount of carbs in a diet. Fat ran about 30%. The lower protein groups got a higher fat intake. So now suddenly we've got low protein, high carb and high fat. And those people still gained the same fucking amount of weight as the high protein group. And in fact, as we said earlier, like, yeah, of course, overeating is going to make you fatter, but it's going to make you heavier because you're not always just storing body fat. You're increasing lean mass. And it's not always just muscle. Doesn't mean eating a high protein diet and overeating calories means you're going to be hench. You're going to increase lean mass. That's everything that is not body fat. So that's your water, your bones, your organs, everything else on top. So the studies show everyone put on the same amount of weight. When you look a little bit deeper, in terms of who put on the most amount of fat, the high protein group wasn't number one. It wasn't top. So therefore, the studies we do have show us that these wild claims are not the case. And if he has the evidence to show, well, actually, here's the flaws with that study. Here's what I've discovered that is verified by other people, peer reviewed. and placebo-controlled trial, whatever the hell is needed for us to say, yes, this is 100% irrefutable, fucking give us it then, without saying it's in my book.
And I want a bunch of studies, right?
I want to read it. I want to
So
learn.
I want a bunch of studies, right? I don't want you cherry picking studies. So
No.
from my I've been back to back with calls this morning, so I haven't done a huge study drive. But from the stuff that I looked at this morning in preparation for this episode, we have a number of studies that say that. And again, here's the thing, right? People talk about, oh well, actually eating more protein and an increase in lean body mass isn't going to actually burn that many more calories. So you put a little bit of muscle on, it's actually not going to be this big transformative thing. All right, okay, you can make that claim, but the problem is of a loss in lean body mass, right? So we see a lot of studies that say that, right, for the lack of loss of lean body mass, people ended up losing more weight. We took a lot of studies that are talking about the obviously thermic effect of food, and talking about people on higher protein diets lost more weight because of the higher protein. There are studies to back that up. We have potentially studies of looking at satiety, and people who went on high protein diets tend to not crave and not get as hungry. There are, and someone's going to say, yeah, well, we found that's not as big a thing as we thought. Yeah, there are studies on both sides of this coin, right? I also found studies, and again, it's something that I'm happy to do, that a lot of these people aren't happy to do, is find also studies that don't necessarily support it. So I found a study today that talked about as long as someone's in a calorie-controlled diet, no different macronutrient composition actually made that much of a difference in terms of overall weight loss. Okay, right. But it didn't say the high-protein group was worse. And what it did say is that a calorie deficit was the main thing that actually attributed to the weight loss, right? And it also abuses all these other things. So when Tim Spector had his first interview in January or whatever it was of this year, and he made those claims about exercise not helping you lose weight, right? Well, okay, maybe it doesn't. But no, what you've now done is now say people who didn't really want to exercise in the first place go, well, see, look, Tim Spector said, I'm not going to go to the gym anymore. What's the point? Well, how about the staving off osteoporosis? How about the improvements in mental health? How about cardiovascular benefits? It's going to lower your blood pressure, make you less likely to have a heart attack. Nothing ruins a weight loss journey like keeling over and dying, right? Like that will fuck up your results quick, right? Like if you talk about, again, we're talking about, there's tons of research coming out now about obesity being linked to people who are under muscled now, right? So let's talk about that, the drop in lean body mass and all the impacts that has on people's lives. So yes, so you're saying, okay, protein might be stored as fat if you overeat it. But what about all the benefits of having more protein in somebody's diet? Yeah, let's put aside, let's assume he's right. Let's put aside the weight loss argument, right? Like, let's look at this with a bit of nuance and a bit of like an overviewing of stuff, right? And you mentioned at the start of this, and I got this quote up, right? Because I couldn't, I should remember it, but I couldn't. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only converted from one form of energy to another. So we assume that nothing is just going to get burnt. It's all going to be converted into something, whether that's heat or breath or CO2 or whatever, like however it's lost or whatever it's stored as. So it's like, it's a bullshit claim, because every energy in the world is converted into another form. So like, what's your point?
Like the deeper we go into it, the more ridiculous it becomes. But because we've got that critical eye to look and go, now not everyone will do this. I love to learn a subject. I absolutely, if I'm passionate about it, my God, I'm going all in, and I'm reading everything. I want to read the stuff that promotes this idea, but I also want to read the stuff that allegedly debunks it, or just argues it, or promotes another way. Because if I just go into one side of the spectrum, then that becomes a rabbit hole, then that becomes a dogma, and then that becomes a tribe. So you have to look at what the other side is saying as well. But that's the way to then learn what actually is the case and what actually is relevant. Okay, so one side says calorie counting is the best way to lose weight. One side says calorie counting is absolutely pointless. But somewhere in the middle of that is the larger, more relevant spectrum of calorie counting isn't everything. It's just a tool. And coming from the other side of it as well. Well, calories do matter. It's a measurement. And what's going to lead to weight loss over time is an energy deficit. So if you want to get, into semantics over the naming of these things, then, well, go back 40 fucking years when the term was coined or whatever, or longer, which you can't do yet. Musk will take care of that, I'm sure. But then, so what? So what do? We just create a new tribe. All this is going to do is enable the people that are already more vocal or more aggressive on that side that say overeating protein is gonna kill you. I'd like to think there isn't a tribe that thinks exercise is not good for you, but maybe there is. Maybe there flipping is now,
There
right?
is.
And let's also bring this into the fact that it's not just about weight loss. The larger, again, I'll just call it tribe. The larger tribe out there talking about nutrition is largely related to weight loss, right? But then that is because that's one of the biggest problems we've got on this planet at the moment. The obesity stats rising, overweight stats rising. Estimated by the year 2050 that 1 in 2 Americans will be obese, not just overweight, obese. That is the death of a civilization if it's not fucking dying already, right? So, yes, of course, it's very, very loud because weight loss, well, excess body fat creates lots and lots of the health issues that we're seeing that are killing people in other numbers as well. A lot of which can be fixed by exercising, improving your diet, eating a little bit less, moving more, the simplest things, right? I've lost my point because we're going on rants today, but this is good. So let's look at it from a health perspective. There's still health reasons, longevity reasons why you need protein in your diet. There's still health and longevity reasons why you need exercise, why you need to strengthen your muscles, need to strengthen your bones, your tendons, your joints. Peter Attia, funnily enough, on Diary of a CEO, it was one of the best Peter Attia episodes I've listened to, and I pay for Peter Attia's private stuff. This episode was phenomenal. And in there, he points out that if someone, okay, in the older generation, but it still happens in young people as well, someone has a fall and they break a hip or thigh bone or something like that, and they're not what you would class as fit and healthy, they've probably got, I hope I'm not butchering this, like a year to 3 years left. Like that could kill them. That broken hip, broken leg could kill them for multiple reasons. And I implore everyone to go out and watch that episode because that's a little bit clickbaity. This is how it happens, right? You say if you fall and break your hip, you've got a year left of life.
Yeah.
Then we move on to the next clip with Darth Vader music going on in the background. But once you listen to the actual, well, the difference is once he explains it, you're like, oh my God, it's even more terrifying. I shouldn't have listened to this episode because now I really want to upload my brain to Neuralink and get the hell out of this flesh body, which is only going to last another 20 years, which is what I actually want to do. So there's a right way of putting this information across. And whilst there's nothing inherently wrong with everything being clickbaity, because it is just grabbing attention, as long as your information has got the path to lead someone down to what is actually best for the majority of people, I don't really care if it's clickbaity or not. But when it's clickbaity and then you look at it and it's like, well, this is actually kind of wrong and this is going to mislead people more than anything, I'm going to fucking pipe up. I don't care how close these people might be financially related to my business. I don't care. If I pipe down, problem never gets solved, right? Things get worse. Then I'm going to have clients turning up going, why are you telling me to eat 1 gram of protein for every pound of my body weight? I just heard Tim Spector said I shouldn't. Well, now we've got a conversation. Like this, we've got some unbrainwashing to do. What's the opposite of brainwashing? What's unbrainwashing?
I don't know. Red pill.
Red pill. Gonna red pill you on nutrition.
Red pill on nutrition. But I agree with everything you said. And again, maybe I'm wrong here, so apologies if he is part of it. But remember when Bartlett released that diary where you have the little QR codes and you get little videos and advice on it, right?
Sure.
And he employed Dylan Cartel to be his fitness advisor on this journal. So someone who preaches a calorie deficit and activity. So all of a sudden, Tim Spector's isn't the guy you go to for this. And I'd also like to add in here, right? The whole thing about Zoe. So why is
Zoe?
Why is he named after a northern guy?
I did know why. I can't remember why. I did realise it after a while, or I read it somewhere. I can't remember why now.
Yeah, like no offense
Yeah.
to anyone called Zoe, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, it's a perfectly nice name, but like, why Zoe? But so the whole point is using blood glucose to individualize your diet and what you respond well to and what you respond bad
Yeah.
to. Okay, yeah, all right, okay. I'm all for that. If you want to stick a needle in your arm and measure your response to the food, then that's awesome. Do you know what?
Mm.
And I'm not being sarcastic. I think that's a fucking amazing tool.
Mm.
But the whole point is personalization of your diet, and that you might not respond to things in the way I respond to things. And then we go out on a podcast and deliberately chuck out foods, like in the same way that
For everyone.
yeah, for everyone, but
For
absolutely everyone.
everyone.
Because he's probably going to say the carnivore diet is bad because it's high protein and it takes away all his fiber and vegetables and all the stuff that he likes, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing that people don't mention about the carnivore diet, right? The people that respond well, people like McGeary, Peterson, people like, these, even Saladino, people that preach it, have had issues where they have responded to defense chemicals in vegetables or pesticides that are sprayed in vegetables. Now, before you say that, but they're a fucking idiot, what do they know? Well, okay, Michaela Peterson had multiple hip and knee replacements before she was 20 and now feels fine and has no skin irritations and no joint pain. So you tell me she's an idiot because I'm not listening to you. And like it's that thing. Well, no one goes to somebody who has a peanut allergy and they go, what the fuck are you talking about? Peanuts are the best. You should be eating peanuts all the time. I don't care if you closes up your throat and dying. You're losing out on the peanuts, right? No one does that because that's moronic. Everyone understands that you can have a peanut and not respond, and this person can have a peanut and it kills them, right? So, but when it comes to the topic of vegetables and some of the stuff that goes on there, which is, it's irrefutable that plants have defense chemicals, and it's irrefutable that pesticides affect people.
Yeah.
And just because the overall consensus is that vegetables are healthy, which I agree with, doesn't mean there aren't those people that don't agree well with them and need to find other solutions, like organ meat and berries and honey and all these sort of stuff, right? So why stop wasting time not finding a solution for these people and instead telling them they're an idiot rather than learning what you can learn from them is stupid. And going into the blood glucose thing, what does Tim Spector do when one of these people eats broccoli and their blood sugar spikes? Because we know that blood sugar isn't just responsible from carbohydrates. Stress response, immune responses can also increase blood sugar because we're going to break down maybe protein. Come on, I'm with you, Tim. Maybe carbohydrates, like stored energy from the liver and whatever else, right? So, okay. So what happens if I have a stress response from eating a piece of broccoli? What do? It goes against your ethos. Are you going to tell that person who might benefit from a higher protein, lower vegetable diet to do it because it's because you're about individualizing? In the same way that someone might not be able to digest a steak, and you would tell them to have less red meat.
Yeah.
Like I'm a big red meat guy. But if I'm not saying it's for everybody. Like you should be looking to individualize this approach by if you've got the technology like Tim has, and he has, to be able to look at this stuff, you out of all people from the research you've seen should be more on the fence with this and be looking at the averages. I tend to see that more people respond to X than Y. I would have much more respect from you going, Diet Coke's killing you. Okay. Who responds bad to it? Who doesn't? How often is that?
Yeah. But one of the big issues I have, and I will wholeheartedly apologise if this is not the fucking case at all. I'm seeing a lot of people walking around with a blood glucose monitor stuck into their arm, right? From multiple companies doing it, right? Large percentage of those people are overweight. It's fairly obvious what you need to do. The blood glucose monitor is not going to tell us anything revolutionary. I also see the efficacy more so for people that have got down to some level of leanness and want to know if there maybe is some sort of food intolerance, metabolic disorder, something along those lines. Because for the large percentage of overweight people that are wearing those monitors, it's all going to say the same fucking thing. But what you said there about what's going to happen when they see their blood sugar spike from protein or broccoli or whatever the hell. As far as I understand it, with this particular company, you're given the monitor, but you're also given their muffins to eat at certain intervals. Yeah. And this will measure how your body responds around those muffins, right? Okay, cool, I get it. That makes sense for someone who's already lean, already active, already probably has stuff in check. For someone who's overweight, they've already got a fucked up diet. What's that muffin going to do? I don't see how the muffin shows anything different to what the rest of their diet is doing. Now, again, if I'm completely wrong on all this and that's not the practice, I will apologise. If someone's using it and can actually explain to me what the real process is, and not so long ago, I looked into it. I'm big on getting my bloods done. I'm big on looking, especially as a 40-year-old male, what is actually going on inside my body. So I wanted to look at that, and I looked at Zoe as an option. It turns out I can't afford it, so I'm not going to go down that route. I'm not going to order the monitor and stuff like that to then find out something they're probably not going to tell me unless I pay for their service that I can't afford. I'm not going to do that, right? And I think it is very important in this day and age to look into your health as far as your budget allows, even though most people need the same basic stuff. But that bit just confused the fuck out of me. If most people are overweight because they've got a poor diet and they're overeating on carbs, overeating on fats, blood sugar's going to be all over the place, insulin resistant, what are these muffins going to show in their blood glucose that their normal diet isn't going to show? For a leaner person, more athletic person, has their diet in check, where there's going to be less irregular blood sugar spikes across the day, then it makes total fucking sense to me. Absolute sense.
You could potentially make an argument. Again, maybe this is actually.
But this, do it, because this is where I could be wrong with my limited understanding. So make that argument.
I might be leaning into your point here, but generally, this is something that Luke Lima spoke to me about recently, which really got me thinking and went down a wormhole in terms of studying. But on the whole, that if you think about someone who's morbidly obese, right, they have no issues mobilizing body fat. Maybe because there's a little of stress, there's always this adrenaline, noradrenaline component in them, and not always. Maybe they're unhealthy, inflammation, things like this cause a stress response. That will help mobilize fat from the cell. Because they've got it, they're always having this turnover and mobilizing fat from the cell. So this is why you'll often see people overweight have high things like high triglycerides and high lipids in the blood, because they're always mobilizing fat from the cell. So mobilization isn't the issue. But then their problem is now oxidizing that. So that's why improving someone's aerobic health and things like this is maybe better for people early on, and fat burners are pretty useless. But if you get someone that's leaner, they don't have as much fat to mobilize, their problem isn't oxidizing because they're probably already pretty healthy. You need to mobilize more. And then you might want to give them things like a stimulant and fat burner and stuff like this. So maybe you can argue that the bodies of people who are overweight because of more insulin resistance. But again, I would argue that actually makes things less accurate from a blood sugar perspective, because these things, this isn't going to be working as well as it should do in the first place. So I agree with it. I think here's, and again, regardless of this, we can go into the science of this: who mobilizes better, who oxidizes better. But if I had this bottle and I poked a tiny little hole and the water was just dripping out, drip by drip by drip, or I poked a slightly bigger hole and it was moving more. But if I'm pouring a pint of water into this every 2 seconds, I'm going to be filling it up quicker than I am emptying it, even if I make it slightly more efficient. So we don't refute this calorie deficit. And I think one thing I really want to get rid of is people in education or health space grouping terms. So calories in, calorie balance and calorie tracking are not the same thing. So you saying calories don't matter and then talking about calorie tracking is two different points.
Yeah, exactly.
In the same way that people go, we have a correlation of people having more issues of metabolic syndrome on a diet full of red and processed meat. Hold on. Hold on a minute. And this happens all the time, right? Red and processed meat? How about we just measure processed meat, and then we measure red meat and a grass-fed steak? Because a grass-fed steak and a bit of corned beef is going to do things very different to the body. So could we not group things? Could we actually be specific with this? The whole point of scientific studies, in my mind, is to control as many variables as possible so you can test a specific hypothesis. So now you're grouping things together. I've now poked a flaw in your argument. So how about we make the effects of grass-fed steak on blood lipids in 800 healthy males? Cool. Good study. I want to know what that is, right? And if it disagrees with me, then I'm fine, no problem. But if you go, the impact on health of red and processed meat on 5 humans, is a terrible study. And I'm sure many people know that this for many reasons, right?
Mm.
And I think we get caught up in this grouping stuff together. Animal diets are the problem. Vegetables are the problem. No. Yeah, like so. I'm sure nothing he's saying is wrong. Inevitably, I just think the conclusions he's drawing to don't always necessarily have the best intentions, and I also think his biases are clouding his judgment. And I think this is I think it's ego is such a big thing in the health space in general. I'm going to move off to Inspector here for a second because it's like I'm going to go on to Brian Johnson, not the Liver King, the other Brian Johnson, the one that's
or the singer from AC/DC, not that one either.
Oh God, I wish I was talking about him more. But like Brian Johnson is the one that wants to live to 7 million, right? And does that by injecting so much Botox into his face, and injecting other drugs. Let's talk about that for a second. Like, so again, this is the bias thing, right? I'm going to let this camera because I realize as I nod my head, it moves with me. I'm going to like. He says the whole point of this thing is I wanted to take up my brain. I want to take up my decisions because I make bad decisions about my devices, and I'm fueled by the data. I respect that. I absolutely respect that. So why are you vegan, Brian? And if he came, and I'm not saying vegan isn't the way, if any vegans is this, if he came with, look, this is the data we've done, and this is why we think I will respond better to a vegan diet, and again, this is about him, this is an independent individual study, than a meat diet. I'll be like, okay, I'm on board with that. But what does he always say? Preference. Hold on. You said you didn't want any of those. I'm in a calorie deficit because my study has done is healthier. Okay, why are you on TRT? Oh, because I'm in a calorie deficit. Well, then isn't there an argument to maybe not always be in a calorie deficit? Like, if my goal is to find the healthiest longevity-based diet, if I'm having to fill myself full of drugs to keep this going, is it actually the healthiest diet? Are you coming to the right conclusions, or is this about you living to 120? Like, and I feel with so many people, I'm not saying I'm any better. I have my biases. I'm not a big fan of vegetables, and I love red meat, and I'm not a great cook. So, like, moving into some of these avenues, and like, I find the research on carnivore diets interesting. That's why I know a little bit of the nuance behind it. Because eating red meat and bacon and butter and all that sort of stuff really appeals to me, right? Eating like cauliflower pizza doesn't. So I'm going to study more of that. But I'm also aware enough to admit my biases and be happy to be proven wrong by someone that spent more time on the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
But I think I don't think I make bold claims.
The Brian Johnson Stephen Bartlett episode, like, just putting this out there as well for anyone that might think, God, maybe these guys just don't like Stephen Bartlett and they're jealous of him because he's got big audience, whatever. He has some incredible guests. He has some of my favorite podcasts of all time, including Russell Brand's one, which I thought was fucking amazing. The Brian Johnson one, I had to listen to it. I was like, why is this guy doing it? Why does this sound like this geezer is taking away the most essential elements of life in order to extend his length of life? I don't get it. Had to listen. Mind was blown away. The commitment this guy's got to his cause, fantastic. What irked me at the end, which is a fantastic word, what irked me at the end was then finding out his reasons why he's doing this. So it's not a case of he's trying to show humanity what the healthiest diet is or anything that's actually going to help anyone on this planet whatsoever, unless you are a multi-million seed capitalist, whatever the fuck you call it, venture, whatever the fuck. I don't know these terms because I'm not one.
Venture capitalist.
Then cool. Fill your boots. That's amazing. But I mean, did you watch the episode?
I have watched the episode, yes.
So he comes out at the end saying that he wants to, take back control of his decisions and live forever with the dream that maybe AI is the thing that will take over the planet to fix the biosphere, the ocean, the forests, and all that. So I'm like, so what's the end goal of the human experience then? We're just meant to become what? What are we doing? Because if AI is taking care of everything else, what do we do? What do we do now?
Is his thing is a stalling experiment, and I
Mm.
will caveat here, like you said, like I made that point, so I am jealous of Stephen Bartlett's audience, and I am. I'm all fairness to this, and I at any point I am not calling out Brian Johnson, Tim Spector, or Stephen Bartlett. Like, but we are, but we're not. In the sense of like, I think like if I had an interview or conversation, maybe when the cameras weren't rolling with Tim, I would learn tons. The guy
Yeah.
is incredibly clever, has some very fair points. He knows more about the gut than I'll know, and that's cool, right? But on like in the same way that Brian Johnson, I admire that commitment, I admire that drive, I admire the cause in a way, even if it is a stall tactic. And I have no problem with him choosing to be vegan. Like none at all. Like you do you. I just have problems with it when you make a big song and dance, but you're trying to take your decisions out of the equation, and then
Yeah.
you make very obvious decisions on this. So well, then your message is flawed. And like and again with Bartlett, it's like my I get annoyed more with people that I feel it's a shame that I
Yeah.
feel like if I didn't like somebody, they
Mm.
wouldn't even. If I adamantly don't like somebody, we probably won't do an episode about them,
Mm.
right? So, like we've spoken about Andrew Tate, for example, right? My
Mm.
opinion, I think I said this on our last episode, but if not, I definitely said this to you outside the recording. My opinion of Andrew Tate has slightly changed. I've never considered myself a fan per se of Andrew Tate, but I liked a lot of his message, and I still do a lot of it. But I'm starting to come around the idea that he's more guilty of stuff and he's a bit more of a prick than I thought, and like that's just growth. And it, like, but again, if I adamantly didn't like him, probably wouldn't mention, right? It's like in any way, and the people are well rounded, and I quite like Bartlett. I'll watch Dragon's Den for Bartlett. I think he's smart. I think he knows what he's talking about. I think he knows the game. He's playing us. We're talking about it. This is going to feed more clicks to him more than it will feed clicks to me. And the thing that annoys me is that like you have the resources, the ability, and the reach now, thanks to Dragon's Den, that you could get as many views, I think, without doing this,
Yeah.
without selling a little bit of your integrity to push clickbait titles. Because like let's compare this, right? Because this is a good example. How many, and I reckon it's more, but if I go to Diver CEO, I see how many followers. So he has 3.5 million followers on YouTube. Chris Williamson has 1.3. Right, it's okay. So he does have more. He does have more. But like, is it this element? Like, and again, I don't know if any of you are massive YouTubers. Tell me this. Like, tell me. Like, I'm assuming it makes a big difference to his bank balance. But this guy doesn't need money anymore. He's set for life. And after a certain amount of like money, it's like it doesn't buy you more happiness. There's a leeway where you don't have to worry about money anymore, and then it's just more stuff. Does YouTube followers, when you don't need the money, equal that? Because I would say that getting to 1.3 million without having to do this is a damn impressive trait. And I reckon Bartlett could at least get to 2 million without these fancy clickbait titles.
Yeah. Yeah, massively so. It is a case of like, God, he should know and he should do better. And he sometimes plays the fool on there. It was Tim Spector's first appearance where Bartlett said the exact words, God, this is all so confusing, isn't it? And it's not. Nothing on that episode should have confused you. On the Peter Attia episode, Peter Attia was going into the 3 ways to restrict your diet so you end up losing weight. 1, caloric restricting, dietary restricting, the method that you're following, or energy restrictive, sorry, not caloric, because, people are going to say calories don't matter. Energy restriction, dietary restriction, and time restriction. The only 3 things you could ever do with your diet that could potentially lead you to lose weight. And they got onto calories. And Bartlett said, calories. Controversial term. And Peter Attia put it perfectly. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be controversial to use the word calorie. Because as you've already said, we're grouping terms. People are taking the word and just putting their meaning behind it, their agenda behind it. So part of me thought, when I first heard that, I was like, fuck yes, Pete. Come on, lad. That's how you do it. Like, almost like a bit of a pushback against Bartlett. But at the same time, that's a question asked on Bartlett's podcast. That is now going to help, hopefully, a lot of people who might have listened to that bit and gone, well, actually, wow, okay, maybe it's not controversial. This guy really seems to know his stuff. Incredibly knowledgeable. Again, that episode was just incredible. I've listened to it twice, and I've actually got it lined up in my list again for a third episode. It was full of that good information. So he has the opportunity to push back, to question. I think one of the reasons why I'm so into Rogan's podcast is because he has Jamie on there. He has someone that can bring something up in seconds that either backs up or refutes any claim that anyone makes on that show.
And he's not scared to do it in the slightest.
He's not scared to do it, and he never cherry picks. Never cherry picks.
Always say as well, when, like, have you ever seen, like, I'll just go on to Rogan before I make my point, but like Rogan when he has Alex Jones on.
Of course.
That is I know, of course I know you've listened to this, but for anyone that hasn't, and regardless of what you think of Alex Jones, right? Go and listen to an episode of Rogan with Alex Jones, and you'll see what we're talking about. Yeah. Because Alex Jones has been right about a lot of stuff. He's wrong about a lot of stuff too, right? But what Alex Jones does, he rambles, and he doesn't bring notes. Yeah. So he literally goes, no, like 9/11 was a hoax. They're making the frogs gay, and like fucking like, Alex, shush, calm the fuck down. Right, what we're talking about. And he will call stuff out. No, let's look at this. Let's find the research on this. And sometimes Rogan he gives him the floor to speak and finds the opportunity for them to be right. Right? Yeah. He's open-minded. He's happy to be wrong. But at the same time, if it's wrong, he has no shame in calling someone out. And if we take Brian Johnson's episode with Stephen Bartlett, like, and I don't necessarily criticize Bartlett for this. Some people do. But I'm going to bring it up and I will say, I don't criticize him for this because your job as a host of a podcast is to not sit and have an argument and a debate with somebody. Is to give the floor to somebody to talk about their ideas. And I've done this. Like, I've had a lot of guests on that I've wholeheartedly agree with. I don't think I've had anyone I absolutely disagree with on yet, although I'm more than welcome to.
That'd be interesting to do.
Yeah, I've had people that I've disagreed on certain parts, and I'm there to give them the floor to speak. I'm not there to make them come round to my way of thinking. I asked you to be a guest. Right, talk to me about your experience. But if you look at like the Bartlett one, he doesn't question anything that Brian Johnson, any of the he talks about the stuff that's great, and then doesn't ever go into the pushback. And and I think that's a shame. Not because I think Bartlett is a cop out from Bartlett. Bartlett's doing his job and he's doing it very, very well. He's a good interviewer. But a lot of people that will come onto the show will want someone to ask that question. And to give Brian Johnson the opportunity to answer this. Like, I would wholeheartedly say that I'm a relative fan of Brian Johnson. And I think I wouldn't want to live his life, but I think some of the stuff he's doing is coming up with some incredible research. Some of it I agree with. Some of the awareness on sort of mono and polyunsaturated fats and the benefits of that on things like inflammation, brain health, and things like this is more, should get out there more. And if he's the person that does that, fantastic. So, but some of those people want those little things questioned, like, well, why are you a vegan? Why are you doing this? And he might have an amazing answer. And he says preference, so I don't think he does, based on his other thing. But he gave an incredible answer. And in fact, you didn't ask that. You now had people going, well, this is just an advertisement. It's a billboard. Yeah. And when he went on Modern Wisdom, he went, okay, we've got to ask, why the choice of being vegan? And he called him on it. And it wasn't criticism. It wasn't, I'm going to have a debate. It was just like, hey, I want to ask you about this. Because people will ask me about this. And that's the stuff I like. I think to finish this episode, I started this episode and I said, I don't know whether he's become more clickbaity or is it because I didn't understand the world that he was in when he was doing the CEO stuff. And I got into Bartlett and I loved it. It became my favorite podcast for such a long period of time. And it still is one of my favorite podcasts, Bartlett. Like, I know you don't Google yourself, but like, I do this with love. I don't like the clickbait titles. I don't like some of the fear mongering and tribalism, but you do have one of the best podcasts on the planet, and fair play to you. First episode was I Have a Secret to Tell You. I don't going to count that because that's a solo episode about starting. Okay. Overcoming depression, burnout, anxiety, and insomnia with conquering anxiety. I think that's a Modern Wisdom clickbait. That is, in my opinion. If you disagree with any of these, then you can say so. I think that this person has conquered anxiety, in his words. We're going to find out how. Why you feel like shit, I don't mind that. It's not saying you feel like shit because of this. It's why you feel like shit. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Mm.
She cheated on me, and that's not all. Okay, like that's his story, right? Like you can't get angry about someone putting a clip of their own story.
Yeah.
Building confidence in an empire, selling Matchroom for $5 billion, inside the world's greatest minds. My dad was a heroin addict. Succeed in life and work. Fall asleep instantly. Motivation hack. This kills your creativity a little bit, but again, it's not masturbation kills your creativity or porn kills. It's this kills. So it's still, and again, this is what modern wisdom does more, right? It's creating buzz, but they weren't like creating anger and frustration and tribalism.
Yeah.
If you went, I didn't even mind so much. It was like, what you're getting wrong about health, or this is what's killing you. But if you went, protein is making you fat, calories are a lie, sugar, the new scary research on sugar, we are blaming something in the headline. Right, and that's where I think it's changed. What do you think?
The rules of marketing have been around for a long, long time, and they're still very relevant because they work. But like any industry, it adapts. The people that are best, absolute best at marketing, are not using headlines such as "the shocking truth behind," what the XYZ doesn't want you to know, or secrets that so-called industry is keeping, whatever the hell. Like, this is like basic, again, clickbaity, whatever term you want to use, kind of early 2000s type marketing. Real marketing that is fully selling to you is way more sophisticated than that. Way more sophisticated than that. And to say something a little bit nasty, I don't fully mean it. Maybe that's the majority. Maybe that's the market intelligence of Diary of a CEO. Maybe that's what works, right? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. And I'm not saying everyone who listens to Diary of a CEO is unintelligent. I'm really fucking not. I think if you are listening to something like that, you're probably more concerned about your health, your intelligence, than multiple other podcasts out there.
Do you think it'd be a good marketing term for short form? So, like, if I'm creating an Instagram reel or a TikTok, me having a hook, because I see a lot of YouTube shorts. What the X doesn't want you to know about this, and I, in a way, I think maybe that isn't a bad solution because you need a hook. Why do people spend more time on someone's video than mine? I'm not great at hooks. Whereas you'd think with long form content, people you've already kind of self-selected people that aren't going to come for the. It's people like, if I listen to Modern Wisdom, not because the titles grab me. Why do I listen to Modern Wisdom? Because I like the interviews. I like Chris. I like the guests.
Yeah.
Right. I like Rogan because I like Rogan. I like Bartlett. Like, again, this is my point. I listen to Diary CEO because I like Bartlett and I like his guests. I've never clicked on an episode because it said protein is making you fat. So maybe other people are different. I'm less likely to click on that episode if it wasn't my job in a way to report on it and make my video about it. So that actually puts me off the show. And I don't think I'm the only one that's been put off by these things. Because when people listen to long form content, I don't think people can listen to long form content based off of clickbait. Because they want to, people that click on because of a title are going to be like, oh, I want to learn about that. And when it's not done in the first 10 seconds, they're out the door. The people that stay for a 2-hour interview have more invested in you than your titles. Surely.
Yeah. I'll use a great example because I would have just said Rogan again. If you look at, I don't think you get the episodes on YouTube anymore. I don't think you get the YouTube episodes
No, but
anymore.
we've got Spotify.
But it's just the name of the episode. It's just the name of the guest. There's never had to be a trailer. There's never had to be, okay, occasionally some fan pages and stuff like that will edit a clip out with a headline on it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, he's the Andrew Tate level of marketing, right? Andrew Tate didn't really market himself, other people marketing for him. Joe Rogan for him. Really well.
Same, right?
2043, Francis Foster and Constantine. 2042, Joe List. Sean Mayle. It's literally just names. Stephen Strope, Eddie Bravo, Michael Easter.
So it's just names, right? But the example I wanted to use because I see his clips all the time now, and rightfully so, because I think he's one of the funniest geezers on this planet. Doesn't do clickbaity trailers, doesn't do headline stuff like that. Theo Von's podcast is growing exponentially because he's incredible and he gets incredible guests on there. But you could say, well, it's just a comedy podcast. There is no headline. There is no nothing to learn. He's had a lot of people on there you can learn from. I beg you to go start listening to Theo Von, as long as it's a guest that is relevant for you as well.
Yes.
Like, it's not just a comedy podcast. He's interviewing, he's learning, he's being Theo Von whilst interviewing. And giving people a platform, like you say. He's not having to do this. I think it comes back to that level of markets. I shouldn't say intelligence. I should say sophistication, and don't necessarily think that that's a negative phrase if you don't have sophistication in the classical sense of the word. We're talking about awareness of a certain issue and how to fix it. That's what I mean. Someone who's highly sophisticated in a certain market doesn't need to be explained to. They don't need their problem explained to them. They don't need to necessarily know what they've been doing before or the multiple solutions at their disposal. They just need to know this is you're going to fix your problem. Boom, high sophistication, ready to buy. Let's go. That's a butchered explanation of my sophistication. But in terms of, whilst I guess Stephen Bartlett's not really selling anything, even though there are sponsors to the podcast, the sophistication level just has to get essentially whoever's in this attention economy that he's currently looking for, right?
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, we're saying about marketing being more sophisticated, and I'm now deliberately playing devil's advocate for Stephen, in the sense of like, well, is it just because we're in a world where we're selling a product? So if I'm selling you coaching, if I'm selling you mentoring, you need to like me, you need to respect me, you need to understand that I may be able to teach you things that you're not aware of. If I'm selling you a dogma, if I'm selling you a cult-like belief or a following, then like in that situation, you're not going to buy from me because you know I'm not that well-rounded mentor. But if I'm selling attention, if I'm selling media, maybe it is the right approach. I mean, like, the guy's successful. Like, maybe we just butthurt about it because it's a term in pro wrestling called being worked, right? So when a heel, who is people don't know wrestling, a heel is a bad guy. So when a heel makes you angry, right? And it's not angry like go away heat, like don't want you on my screen, I hate you. It's I hate you and I want you to lose. That's called being worked. We are being worked by that heel. Are we being worked by Stephen Bartlett because he's just what he's doing is working, and his goal is to get people like us on a podcast chatting about his clickbait headlines? So then people go, let me check out who the Stephen Bartlett guy is. Yeah. Like, are we collateral damage in the bigger picture?
Well, of course, we're a part of the puzzle. That's what it is. We're a part of the puzzle, and that's the same thing with the Andrew Tate stuff. Like, how many TikTok and Instagram channels before he was completely banned from all this stuff were just recutting his videos up for him as part of his university, as far as I'm aware. Like, it's the guy's fame went ballistic overnight, right? Became the most Google guy on the planet. Incredible, right? Incredible marketing tool that a lot of people use. Like, you could say what you want about it. Every major company uses it, especially Apple. Apple are phenomenal for it. Because what are you going to do? You're going to share about your new phone. You're not just going to share about your new phone. You're going to take pictures on your new phone. And people are going to go, oh my God, look at the quality of that picture. Oh my God, you can zoom out now. Oh, you can blur the background now. I want it too. Because you saw someone else have that. Like, that's why they don't really need to. If you think about an Apple advert, they're the shortest, sleekest things ever. Really. They show the phone, and then it's some sort of scenery which is not shot on an iPhone. How do they really market from other people marketing it for them? Same with any other product. Same with any other large, profitable product. Get everyone else to do the marketing for you. You just provide the goods. And in this case, it's crazy information.
Yeah. On that note, I think that's a good time to call it there. For people who want to find your clickbait titles, by the way, I will say this as well. I gave you a shout out in my last sort of power hour call on the Supercharged group because they were talking about it wasn't an Instagram shout out. It was in a private group. We were talking about, as I said before, about like getting your own personality across. I said before we came on air that I might get a Triple H axe figure, do a video of that, talk about some of my interests. And we were talking about, I went, go and follow my bud Rob at Fat Loss Fastlane, because you're really good at putting in your own personality and what you like as a 40-year-old man. So, things, TV shows in black and white and things that were good on when you were a kid. In today, you got Simpsons clips. Who were the two people you had the other day?
Oh, what, the two fighters that came in? Mate, they were just off a Canva. I'll tell you what, I'm amazed that I managed to get away with a video with a 9/11 joke in, and no one's complained. Maybe no one watched it. That's what it is.
Which video?
The first video I do about quality versus quantity. I say, Don't think of them as those old school bank scales where everything has to be evenly balanced. Think of them as two elevators in two separate towers. That was the best analogy I could come up with. And when I say the word towers, I think of 9/11. So I put in a clip of 9/11. Maybe no one complains because no one watches it.
So for everyone now, I'm going to do your shout out at the end of the show for you. Go and search Fat Loss Fastlane and go and complain at Rob about his terrible bad taste joke. And then when he's cancelled, right, more eyes are going to come on this show, right? Because we know what happens when people are cancelled, they go through the roof. So what if you're watching this in the back end of 2023, you will catch us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. If you're catching us in 2024, we'll probably be on Rumble. But Rob, been a pleasure as always, dude. Catch you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Self-Made Podcast. If you like me and enjoy binge watching podcast episodes, click here for our latest episode. And if you want to stay in touch and find out when the latest episodes go live, click here to subscribe to the channel.